Okay, everybody knows there's a modality in therapy called NLP, Neuro-Linguistic Programming. Anybody know about that? NLP? It's a nice modality. It's like less evasive, and it kind of works a lot with associations. You know, you walk over to someone, you stand like this, and they start to understand that you're the boss, and then it's a whole thing. You wear a pinstripe suit, Neuro-Linguistic Programming. Anyway, usually when people see their dentist, the association they have is less than happy. But for me and I think all of Dr. Gottesman's patients, it's the opposite. For me, it's because I know, besides his smile and his care with my mouth, but he's always going to have a lot of Divrei Torah to tell me, to speak about his lovely sons, etc. So it's a real pleasure for me. I was thinking, I thought about it a long time ago, but to finally get the good doctor to share with us. And it's a very special part of I don't even call it tradition, I'd call it more education. The education Shapell's that we always try to bring, high-level people who aren't just rabbinical, in the classical sense of the world, but are straddling the worlds of working and learning and all that's in between in a successful way, which is really incredible for the chinuch. So we try every Rosh Chodesh or so, to do that, and I'm really, really happy, as I'm sure you will be to hear Dr. Gottesman speak. Although I have almost a minute to see him every Wednesday now. I told him, but that's my problem. I ate too much candy as a kid, so I should give you guys a bracha. You don't see your dentist as much as I see mine, but some people have very good teeth. Anyway, maybe fluoride in the water. I don't know. But with no further ado, it's a great pleasure for us to hear the doctor. Everybody should listen carefully and ask questions at the end. And listen carefully. These are golden opportunities for you to tap into the minds and lives of people who are living the lives that you're going to be living, Bezrat Hashem. So make the most out of it.
Rav David, thank you very much for inviting me. It's wonderful to be here this afternoon. We both agree that our meeting here is far more pleasant than our usual weekly meeting at my office, but it's really a tremendous honor to be here and to speak to all of you. Before I go into the main topic of what we want to discuss, and I urge you to all keep please eating, I would like to give you all a brief biographical sketch of my life. Not so exciting, but there are a number of highlights. There are a number of things that really I've seen Yad Hashem Mamash touch me, and you'll hear some of them. I was born a long time ago, I prefer not to give the date, in Manhattan. And in the ward, my father told me that I was in the same maternity ward as Harry Truman's grandson. And of course, my father said that I was much smarter than him. I don't know if he was right, but that's what my father's Parlavcha said. And until the age of 6, we lived in the South Bronx. We actually lived diagonally across from Yankee Stadium. Didn't really help us. We weren't Yankee fans. My father was an old Giant fan, but we did get to go to some ball games, and then when the neighborhood turned bad, we moved to 5 towns. Both my mother and father had cousins that lived there. We moved to the Far Rockaway Lawrence border. We moved to the 5 towns, and I was there pretty much till I came here. I went to the old Harlow. I don't know if anyone here remembers such an institution. It's now Darchei Torah. It was a very fun place to be. And then when it was 9th grade, one of the moments in my life that my father said, no, I don't want you to continue here. I don't want you to go to the local yeshiva where all your friends are going. I want you to go to MTA. I want you to go to Yeshiva University. That's the kind of education I want you to have, the Torah of Avodah. And I did. I went with only one other person in my class. I convinced them to come with me. And we went together, all my good, very close friends, and a lot of friends. They stayed in the local yeshiva. And that was the beginning of some of my daring activities that I've done in my life. I went to MTA, and then I went to Yeshiva University, and I went to Columbia Dental School, and I did a year of residency in Brooklyn Jewish Hospital. It was called Interfaith, right near the Lubavitcher Rebbe. I used to go eat there and daven there on Sunday, but to my great regret, I did not go meet the Rebbe, and I guess I was in a different place than David. But all right, that's Zozeh Mashaya. And in 1990, I made Aliyah. I want to highlight a few high points or turning points in my childhood. One of them was at the age of 9, my beloved grandparents made Aliyah themselves to retire in Tanya. This was a great trauma from my sister and I and all the family. My beloved grandparents that we would spend every Leila Seder with. I would sit with my grandfather at the table, and it was really devastating. But this was really a harbinger of what would go on later in our family. 4.5 years after my grandmother had passed away, my father would be doing the same. My parents would be doing the same thing with me, who would subsequently make Aliyah. So this really got into the family, the muda'ut, the awareness that such a thing is normal, that you have somebody who's very close to you living far away. And in those days, there was no email, there was no, when you left, man, that was it. You would talk very periodically. It was very difficult. There were letters. But still we stayed close through different correspondence by mail. The other big, important part of my childhood was the year gap between high school and college. Some of you are in that now. I went to Shalavim, and that was a tremendously eye-opening experience. We were rooming with Israeli roommates. It made us realize that there is a different world. There's a different metziut that we're growing up. I grew up very middle class. We were not spoiled, my sister and I, but we were still, compared to these guys, a bit spoiled, and it really broadened to a large extent your OFEC, your horizons. I forgot all my English already. And there we met Israelis, and there were a lot of events going on in Israel at the time, 81, 82. They left Yamit, and there was all kinds of things going on. And of course, at the end of that year, in June of 82, happened the Lebanon War. And I went away for Shabbos to the north, and of course, Motzei Shabbos I was coming back. I saw all the armored vehicles going toward the border. I didn't know what was going on. And when I got back to Shalavim, 2 of my roommates were gone. They went to fight in the war. And this, and I said, if I make Aliyah, my kids would be more like this, not so much like me. And sure enough, 41 years later, my wife and I in Simchat Torah were sitting together in those excruciating hours till Yom Tov was over, waiting to hear what terrible things had happened. And I'm a person really, you can ask my boys, Shabbos and Yom Tov is where I thrive the most, and I definitely don't want Shabbos and Yom Tov ever to end, but that was excruciating. And 15 minutes before Havdalah, we hear a knock on the door. And it was my son Bensi. And I said, Bensi, what are you doing here? You're Shalayim for Yom Tov. No, Daddy, I got a tramp, and I'm here, and we have to go. So that really, what I had with my roommates 41 years earlier, played out with my own son, and it played out with all my sons. And if there is time at the end, we have a lot of different stories and perspectives on the last 2 years. Our family was very involved, and if I talk about it now, I probably won't be able to go on so well. So I'll just leave it at the end. Somebody please remind me if there is time. I would love to talk about it. And that really opened my eyes that year in Shalavim. When I got back, I had been to funerals of 2 students from Shalavim that died. I came back to America, and the contrast was very, very stark between what was going on in Israel and what people in America were concerned. Of course, and that stuck with me always. And when I had my chance to make Aliyah, which is the next thing I want to talk about, and how I met my wife, which was very much Yad Hashem, which I will do now. And in the year 1990, I had finished my residency, and I was very, very grinded down. It was a lot of work, a lot of years of school. It was very taxing. You're an American kid, you just want to have fun, right? So I had enough already, and I needed to get out. And I wasn't married yet, and it was, where was I going to go after? And I said, I need to go to Israel a little bit, see what's going on. And there was a program to volunteer as a dentist. They would let you work with children in Ashdod. It was from the Alpha Omega Society, and you could go in the summer. They give you an apartment that you could stay in. They paid for your flight. You work with kids for a few weeks. I don't know why they accepted me. I said, no, what the heck I was doing. I just finished my residency, but they accepted me, and I went. And I remember that summer waiting for the luggage as it was coming around, and I felt something very different. I felt some kind of pulse that, oh my God, this is where I want to be. Something was talking to me. It was almost mystical. Oh my God, And it was actually August 2nd, 1990. It was a day that Saddam Hussein went into Kuwait, and that subsequently would lead to another very busy a period of time here with gas masks, and there was all kinds of stories that I can go into also, but it's not really our topic. And I came to the apartment, and my cousin who was living here, he was also single, he was here, and he took me in. I spent Shabbos with him until I went to Ashdod. I spent Shabbos with him, and one evening he said he had a date, he was going to come back for the date, and I was waiting for him when he came back, and I said, "Oh, Akiva, how was the date?" And he said to me, "Oh, it was fine. It was very nice. The girls were blah, 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 very nice and all this, but not for me." And I said, "Well, why not for you? What was wrong with her?" And he described her, and I said, that might sound interesting for me. But I was then going back to America to get my stuff to make my official aliyah. I spent Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur in Shalavim in a very emotional davening, praying for what was going to be with me. And I went back for Sukkot to America to get all my stuff. And my nephew was born. I waited. My sister was giving birth, so my nephew was born. And the next day I left. I was waiting for him to be born on Lech Lecha, so I could leave the next day. But it was by era. It was a little off. But the next day I left, and it was extremely. And I'll just say 2 or 3 sentences for you guys. I know most of the guys here based in America. It was extremely difficult to leave my family. I tell this to you now. I almost don't know how I did it. And I'll just tell you how I was able to do it. I didn't have any issues with anybody. My sister had 2 little children. My niece and I were extremely, extremely close. And it was difficult. But one thing, I forgot my English, one thing guided me. I said, I do not want to live with regret. I do not want to say that this was a fork in the road and I didn't try. I don't want to be some overweight, middle-aged idiot living somewhere in New York and saying, I could have been in Israel, blah, blah, blah. I didn't want that. The regret drove me to do it. And of course I said to myself very rationally, if it doesn't work out, I can always come back. Nobody's forcing me. If it doesn't work, I'll come back. And that really ultimately allowed me to do what I did. And getting back to that story, so I made Aliyah, and there was no Nefesh B'Nefesh. Nobody was waiting for me. When I went to the Jewish agency to get a free ticket, I said, when do you want to make Aliyah? I said, what about next week? They started doing all kinds of security checks of me that I was some kind of Mooney, or I don't know, some Christian, because usually they would, malavet people for years doing it, and all of a sudden I showed up. But I got my free flight and I came, and I arrived actually on the day that Rabbeim Kahana was murdered in New York. Everything was very swirling. It was everything was turbulent for me personally, so I felt like everything was turbulent. The next day I had to go to the Misrat HaPnim. If anyone here is of age who remembers what the Misrat HaPnim was in those days, it was about 8 hours of excruciating Israeli bureaucracy. You guys have no idea what it was. I came home in a depressed state, like, what the hell am I doing here? This is like, wow. I already got all my kapara, I could skip next year's Yom Kippur, I'm done, And my cousin's looking at me and says, you don't look good. I said, no, I did not look good. And then I said to him, you remember that girl that you went out with in August and you told me about her? What's with her? And he said, you know what, Jane? I happen to have this little piece of paper with her phone number on it. 5678950. I have that phone number. Let's call her right now. Hello? Hi? Oh, hi, Akiva. You remember me? Oh, yeah. I have a cousin. He's not like me. He's different. Not that I'm so great, not that he's so bad, but he's different. And she agreed. And this was Tuesday night. And the following Sunday night, I met this girl. She claims I didn't stop talking at all that first date, but since then I totally stopped talking, but that's a different story. And after the first month, I called my parents and said, Mom and Dad, I met somebody. Really? This was like they probably were davening day and night for this. Really? Oh, how many times did you go out with her? 2, 3, 4, it was a month. I said, we just counted up. 17. My mother dropped the phone and said, David, come to the phone immediately. Because they realized that something was happening. This was, of course, my wonderful boy's mother, Miriam, who I'll speak about it. And we got married the following August, and About 2 years later, we moved into Beit Shemesh, and we've been there ever since then. And that's really my biographical sketch. I'd like to get into the main reason I was invited here to speak. It wasn't just to tell you stories about me, but I thought some of them might interest you. And if anyone is really nearing any kind of decisions, you should know that if you just take that little leap, Hashem will do the rest for you. And clearly this was all Yad Hashem. I had been the same person all those years. In 1 year I had gotten married, made Aliyah, had a new job. It was all in 1 year, and it was clearly Yad Hashem was guiding me. But in order for Him to guide me, I had to take the first step, and then He took me the rest of the way. To our topic at hand, I don't know if it's a Gemara or it's a Medrash, my boys have heard this a lot from me. We know that everything in the world is written in the Torah, 5 books of Moses, everything is in Parshat Bereshit, and everything really is in the first pasuk. Bereshit bara Elokim et hashamayim v'et haaretz. The world, as religious Jews, is composed of shamayim and haaretz. This tension, or synthesis, or tension between the mundane and the spiritual, this is something that defines us. How much do we invest in the spiritual? How much do we invest in the mundane, in what we have to do? And this is really, when Rav David mentioned this to me, the challenges of our Balabas, this is really my main challenge in my life. How exactly every moment or every part of every day, where do I invest? Do I invest in the spiritual or in the mundane? And this is really something that any religious Jew or any Jew has to make that decision. How much are you invested in the Ruchnius? How much are you in the Gashmius? And maybe you could make some of the Gashmius into Ruchnius. That would help you, and therefore you would really be all in Ruchnius, as we try to do. Just before I get into it, there are 3 main issues in a life that a person has to work out in order to have a chance in this tension between the Ruchnius and the Gashmius. And I'll explain. A person needs to have good health, right? If you're not healthy, God forbid, Hashem Yishmo, and you have to be doctors all day, you can't do anything. You can't work, you can't learn. So you have to try to eat well, you have to daven the Bais Shalom, that He gives you good health. That needs to be in order. And also your personal life needs to be in order. Now, this is not a shidduch discussion here. I don't know about these things, but if you want to live it seems to me that if you want to live in a certain level, a certain standard of living, you need to have a partner in life that will subscribe to such a level of living. Right? I mean, if you're living with somebody who wants the caviar all day or live in wild, mansions and all that, and you want to sit and learn or spend time learning, it's not going to work. You need to find somebody who will be on your level. I was thinking about it, that the rule of thumb is usually, and I saw this Rav David last week, usually the standard of living that a couple live is usually determined by the wife. You could ask any married man, usually the man, give me a good cup of coffee, maybe a ball game here and there, but the women usually determine the standard of living. So therefore, in finding a partner, it's important that partner be on board with you, what you're trying to do. And also neighborhood is very important. One of my children, I don't remember who it was, I think it was your sister, asked me a long time ago, we live in a nice garden apartment, but she said, Daddy, why don't we live in a house? Whatever, you're doing okay, we could go to a house. I don't know if it was one of you, I think it was who, but it was their sister, they only have one sister, and I said, you know what? If I moved out of this apartment, I wouldn't be near this certain neighbor. And without this neighbor, I would fall into spiritual abyss. In other words, I would go fighting, as they say. This guy is such an inspiration, they both know who he is. And if I didn't have him next to me, seeing how a Jew should live, I'm wondering what would happen to me. So that's number 2. Along with a batzug, the personal, is to live in a good environment where it's conducive for your kind of lifestyle. If you're living, in a place with all kinds of, I don't want to go to places, mansions and all kinds of things, and you want to live modestly, that's obviously going to have a problem. So number 1 is health. Number 2 is the personal, which is of course the shidduch and the environment, the place that you live. And number 3 is our big topic, parnasa. What do I do about parnasa? My boys know I've discussed with them many times. How do we deal with this? Yaakov Avinu asked HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Ten li beged lechol, Beged lecho. See, I ate too much. Beged lechem lecho, beged lilbosh lechem locha. Thank you. I'll just make sure everybody's awake. So he asked for the basics, for clothes and food. I would say you need functional, I call it functional materialism. You need that the materialism will be a means and not an end. The reason why I'm working and I need money is so that I can fulfill other goals, other hopefully spiritual goals. It's not an end in itself. That's what Yaakov asked for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Now, this is tricky though, because you can't just say, I'm a space cadet, I'm a spiritual human being, and I'm not going to work, I'm going to go fly up in the air. No. You need to make a parnasa. In other words, it's tricky. You need the right izun, you need the right balance, because if you don't make money, that's going to lead to personal problems, that can lead to health problems, that's your children. So you need to decide on a level that's comfortable for you so that you have enough, but you're not, as we say, orangutan in it. Okay? This is a very important aspect of this. Exactly how much do I work? Now, I went into dentistry because I knew that I'm not going to be a trillion millionaire, but I can have a parnasa. It may not take up so much of my time. I will have time for other things. And besides, in the 70s, if you wanted to move to Israel, you became a dentist and not a doctor. But that was for a different era. So these three things need to be in order for you to have a chance. You need to have your parnasa issues worked out. And you need to, and you should think in advance. When I'm learning now a profession, if you're going to become a CEO of some startup, and you're going to be 24/7 on your phone, and day and night, you're not going to have any time for spirituality. You'll be lucky to get to a mincha marav if you're lucky. So, to plan a parnasa that, you'll be able to put food on the table. I have decided I want to live at a certain level. My children who have continuing education, they're both in master's programs, I pay for them because I think that's very, very important, and I'm determined that I'm going to work for that. That's something that's very important to me. And of course to get a bat zug, and that, that will go along with this. And of course, B'ezrat Hashem, we have good health. Now, just to get down to the nitty gritty of my life, what I have done for the last decades in my fight or my synthesis between these two issues. In 1993, when we moved to Beit Shemesh, 3 months later, my neighbor upstairs, who was the de facto rabbi of the shul, we were all young couples, said to me, Jay, let's start Daf Yomi tomorrow. We're learning the starting Masechah Sota in July 1993, and I had my 30th birthday, and I figured I better start doing something with my life because, otherwise I'm going to be a disaster. So we started, and we did it for about 2 years, and then he subsequently had to move. But in the interim, when my oldest son was born at the end of 95, I got a call from Rabbi Neil Simon from Magen Avot, who lived in the next Haredi neighborhood, even though he was American and all that. He said, I want to give a Daf Yomi in the neighborhood. I heard that you're involved. And we started a Daf Yomi in the evening. And then we had a different Maggid Shir in the morning. And then there were two Daf Yomis going in the morning and the evening that I was involved with. I have a rule, can't always do it, but when it comes to Ruchnius, I only add. I will not subtract. If I'm starting to learn something else, I will not subtract something. I may not learn it as well as before because I'm giving my attention to something else, but in the world of Ruchnius, we do not subtract, we only add. If you want Gashmius, you can subtract whatever you want and add something else. So subsequently, we had these two Daf Yomis going. Now, before Rav Stepansky made Daf Yomi famous, there were other people that were obsessed with Daf Yomi, and we were doing it morning and night. Now, the reason why Daf Yomi is good for Balabatim is because it has its own inertia. No matter what is going on with your life, no matter where in the world you are, and I've been everywhere with this, if there's a daf going on, the daf always goes on. And that sort of carries you through life. When I started with Daf Yomi, I did not have children. Subsequently, later years, we had 3 children born within 21 and a half months. And the house was told vavo. But the daf took me. My wife, she should live and be well. She said, I'll never prevent you from learning. She would send me out with these 2 guys there crying and screaming. I would just walk out of the house and learn it all. Anything I've ever accomplished in the world of learning is, of course, a credit to my wife. There's nothing to talk about. So that the Daf Yomi has a tremendous power because of the kriyas to take you going. Now, what's the problem with Daf Yomi? You guys, yeshiva guys, it's, fair, blah, 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 blah. It's fast, it's chafif, it's hard to understand. Now, the way I try to conquer that is now, everyone has different type of Yetzer Hara, right? So my Yetzer Hara doesn't let me do Chazara so much. He's against me with the Chazara. But to prepare a daf that I never did, you know what, I'll let you a little bit, I'll throw you a bone. He'll let me. The Yetzer Hara will let me prepare a daf. So my Chavrusa for the last 30 years told me, listen, Jay, you got to prepare the daf. So in addition to going to these 2 shiurim, I would prepare the daf. How would I do that? I would do that because I had a Chavrusa on Shabbos, and we learned Shabbos and Sunday stuff. Sunday morning for many years we learned together before I started work, which I had to cut out now about 10 years ago. We would do Monday and Tuesday stuff, because then I was working a little bit some twice a week on the bus. Each way I would do another daf, okay, back and forth. Now, I don't want you guys to say, this guy, I can't do what this guy's doing, because I could trust you that I'm definitely ADHD, and I'm definitely got problems concentrating, and if I could do it, you could do it. As I told my boys, to succeed in life, you don't need a brain, you need a tush. In other words, you need the persistence, you need determination, and all I could say about all the years that I've been doing the daf is that I have come. I've been there. I can make a V. I've missed very few days. And of course, with my dear wife, if we have to go somewhere, I make her crazy. We got to go be back at this hour because of the daf and this. Last week she was yelling at me, what's going on? Why did we have to go here? And I said, no, Rabbi Simon's not here. I got to fill in for him. Oh, okay, whatever. And I made her crazy just like when I was a kid. I would make my parents crazy about the football games. On Sunday, we got to get home for halftime. We could only travel at halftime. And my mother started yelling, and my father said, leave him alone. He's right. We got to get back for the game. So now, thank God, I've reformed my ways, and I may drive my poor wife crazy for the daf. And this is how I've been doing it. I've been preparing, and really over all these Asrot years, I've always been prepared. Sometimes Rabbi Simon could call me an hour or two before. I need you to fill in, and I'm able to actually know it. I don't always know it so well, but when I look it over before, when you go to the shir, it's a little better, and sometimes if it's an easier daf during the shir, I could be looking at a different daf, and I'm all over the place. This went on for a long time, and I did get a little grounded down with this, and I was looking for something else. So since the COVID, when I determined that I was able to work in the morning only and do okay, I started getting involved with Daf Yomi of Yerushalmi. I don't do it daily, but I get all those Green Book art scrolls. God bless them; they're unbelievable. And you just read them. And now I'm doing a few Masechtas. I actually finished one on Shabbos, and I do that in the afternoon between all the patients that call me and ask me questions and other community work that I do. I have the Yerushalmi with me, and therefore I have a free moment. I sit on my medpeset in my easy chair, and I do the Yerushalmi, and that really. I'll just say one last thing. Is that the way I determine if my day was successful or not is how I have harnessed the afternoon hours. How I have made use of the time. Have I wallowed in some basketball game or baseball game? I do like sports, so that is a problem, but have I wallowed and done something, or have I been able to harness the time and learn? Baruch Hashem, in the morning I work. As a dentist, I'm basically in a robotic existence. I've been doing it for 36 years, and I do what I do. And thank God, Baruch Hashem, Hashem helps me with that. But I measure my day, how well I'm able to harness those hours. That, to me, is a successful day, and how well I've been able to conquer this synthesis, this pulling between the mundane. If I have to go do something, I have to go to the post office and get something. I was telling Rav David last week, you could be busy your whole life. If you have a family with sidurim, with errands, all afternoon. You could work. Even if finish like me at 1 o'clock, 1:30, I'm at Mincha. From 2 o'clock on, you could be busy with your day, with errands, and Kal V'chomer, if you finish 5 or 6 at night, you could spend your whole life just on errands and arranging, and this pituach, this insurance should be misudar, and this and that. And it's a very, very big battle, and this really, to this moment, to this day, from when I leave here till always, this is the issue that I deal with. I'm thankful, Baruch Hashem, Hashem has given me good health, it's given me a wonderful wife, a wonderful family, and parnasa, so I am able to get to this tension and this fight that I have to balance these two things. Whatever you guys can control in advance and to try to make it as easy for yourself. Everybody knows themselves. Play to your strengths. Try to cover up your weaknesses. And I think that, look, Hashem didn't give the Torah to Malchei Shareis. This is the pshat that He gave it to Bnei Adam, because we have this tension and this, I don't know, if I could do it, I'm sure you guys could do it. My guys are doing it there, and B'ezrat Hashem, we should all hear good things.